Um, so I would like to start by talking about the origins of the word mentor. So okay, this doesn't seem to be the last version of my slides, but it doesn't matter. So I'm sure that you all know, because most of you are Greek, that mentor is a Greek word. And actually, the name mentor was first met in Odyssey. And he was a friend of Odysseus. So when Odysseus left for the Trojan War, he entrusted the mentor with the task of bringing up his son Telemachus. And because of the role of mentor in Odyssey, the name mentor has been adopted in many languages as someone who imparts wisdom to and shares knowledge with a less experienced colleague. And that was supposed to be a question to you, but I don't know, for some reason my animations do not work. So who else has repeatedly acted as a mentor? It was not just the mentor, the friend of Odysseus, but it was also the Athena goddess. Athena has repeatedly assisted Telemachus and Odysseus, often taking the disguise of mentor to hide herself from the suitors of Penelope. So, and if we look at the ancient Greek mythology and history, we will see that mentoring was quite common in ancient Greece, and there are a lot of examples of mentors. For instance, maybe the most common one is Alexander the Great, and his mentor was Aristotle. But also Diotima was the mentor of Socrates. This might be something that you don't know. Hypatia was the mentor of Synesius, and also there are a lot of other people who were considered wise in ancient Greece, in Athens, like Socrates and Pericles, and many people were going to them to ask for advice. So in the context of the chapter, we have considered some schemes. I'm going to skip this slide because we don't have a lot of time. We have discussed in student mentorship, or some kind of industrial internships program, or some kind of an hierarchical mentorship scheme where everybody could help peers that are in younger age or in a more junior stage of their career. For the structure of the mentorship workshop, we're going to have an impulse talk, which will be given by Geraldine Fitzpatrick. And then we may have the brainstorming session. We will have a brainstorming session using the Mentimeter. And then a breakout session where we are going to discuss needs, what each one of us can do if we were mentors, and also finally a recap and advance session. So now I would like to introduce to you Geraldine Fitzpatrick. 1 minute, please. So Geraldine. Geraldine is a professor at the University of Vienna, and she has a very, very big expertise on leadership and leadership workshops. She likes very much organizing this kind of events to help younger people and her colleagues to improve in their career. And I am actually, she has an excellent record, scientific. I'm gonna skip these details. They are recorded in her CV that appears on the website. And I'm gonna give the floor to Geraldine. So Geraldine, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, I'm just going to try and share that again. So I just want to, I don't know if people can still see my video, but you see I have my owl of Athena here, which was a lovely gift from a previous visit, and my Athens necklace as well. So while I'm disappointed not to be able to be there in person, I have got my little Greek connections right with me today. And what I want to do today is really just map out a landscape of possible issues. So I have lots of slides here, and they're meant to be a resource for you afterwards. So I won't talk to the details of what's on the slide. I will just more orient you to the sorts of topics and issues. And I think that the main messages that I'd love to try and get across are that we can all be mentors, and because we're all experts in something that we can help or advise people on, and we all need mentors, regardless of what stage of our career we're at. So I'd like us to open up that thinking and not just think about, oh, it's only, you know, senior people, whatever that means, who can be mentors. So start thinking about that now. I also want to just give the main message that we talk about mentors and mentoring as if there's one single model for what mentoring is, but there's, you know, mentoring covers a whole range of different sorts of relationships and structures and goals. And so I want to try and just point us to some of those possibilities. And again, you can go into the details later to see, you know, if there's one that sort of works with you more in particular for where you're at. I also have some more practical suggestions there again that I'll just orient you to. And so there'll be a time afterwards to ask questions if you have some very quickly, but the emphasis of today's workshop is to create, you know, just some impetus to seed some really good discussions together about what you might practically do within the Greek context. I don't know why I've got a frog in the throat, but so Yul has already done a great job in defining mentoring, and I think it's wonderful that it's got these Greek roots. And I mean, in its essence, it's a learning relationship, that there's someone who can provide more support or advice or guidance from some position of being more of an expert in that particular area. Now, it doesn't have to do with seniority, just to reinforce that point. And so that they can help another person do it. So it's about a learning relationship and helping. Just to differentiate, while mentoring can mean a whole lot of things, mentoring is not about day-to-day management. So it's usually outside of your management structure or your, you know, like your lecturer supervisor structure. It's not an appraisal thing. It's not counseling or therapy, but a mentor may be able to help you recognize where you may need counseling and point you to it. It's not careers advice in particular, in the sense of advice telling you what to do in terms of profiling, but mentors could certainly talk to you about advice, and it's not meant to be parental in any way. And mentoring is something that's carried out in all sorts of industries and sectors, and in particular within the academic context. There's also a lot of research that points to the fact that mentoring can be really important for people just in helping people's academic and career success. And that can be starting at sort of, you know, at the bachelor student level right through to the full professor level within academia. So there's a lot of evidence that says it's worth engaging in mentoring and or being a mentor. So I'd like to just quickly think about, you know, we're not going to have time to do brainstorming, but just take a minute to think about, why could you want to be a mentor? So we've said everybody can be a mentor because we all have some expertise or experience in something. Like even if you're a second-year bachelor student, you've got expertise in being a first-year bachelor student, or and so on. So just, why could you want to be a mentor? And so some of the things that I could think about could be, why could you want a mentor? So it could be about, I've mucked that up, sorry, but you know, why could you want a mentor? So it could be about, you know, you're moving into a new role and you need someone to help orient you. So someone who's familiar with the role, or you need some expert help in how to do something. And that's often sort of more practical matters. It could be how to get all your assignments done within a semester, or how to get papers published, or if you're a lecturer, how to design a curriculum. It could be about how do I manage the stresses and the workload, and how do I manage time, you know, in terms of more well-being. It could be about exploring potential career possibilities and getting more familiar with what the other options are. It could be about wanting to get someone to help open other networks or access to resources for you. And it can also be just something where I just need a sounding board. I just need to hear that I'm not alone, that other people are experiencing the same thing, whatever it is. So I can be much more open. So lots of reasons why any of us could want a mentor. And thinking about why you would want to be a mentor, I think that the key thing is about paying it forward and contributing to this. You know, often we hear the jargon about academic circle of kindness, where if, you know, imagine a community where we're all helping each other with all of our different areas of expertise. And it's again, there's sort of different suggestions there. And it's not just about paying it forward, but it's also that we get something back. We get personal satisfaction and we get to meet interesting people. And it's always a two-way learning relationship, even if you're the mentor. So in just unpacking different types of mentoring relationships, I said that there are many, many, many different examples, and there's no recipe or one size fits all. It depends on what the particular needs are, what the particular resources are that are available, time available, and just personal preferences as well. But just to unpack some of the different ways that mentoring relationships can differ. So I'm going to start on the right-hand side here, where, you know, they can be one-on-one. So I'm a mentor for one other person, you know, sort of in a one-on-one. And that mentor relationship can be where, you know, I've been assigned to be a mentor for that person, or asked to be a mentor for that person, or that person has come and asked me to be a mentor for them. We can also think about mentoring in a group, and that can be about like one mentor having multiple mentees who meet together regularly, or it could be a mix of mentors, and, you know, so probably a fixed group of mentees. I know it's funny language, isn't it? Coming from an English context, mentee reminds me of a peppermint sweet that we had as kids called Minties. So I often have a little joke in my head about, you know, talking about Minties. So you can have usually a fixed group of mentees, and there may be a mix of mentors who work with that group. So one week, one mentor might come in because they're going to talk about publishing and they're really expert in publishing, and the next meeting someone else might come in, or multiple mentors might participate in any group. All of those things are possible. And in terms of formats, you know, you can have it very structured, where you set up at the very beginning about, we're going to start a mentoring program at this university. It's going to last for this academic calendar year. We're going to have a kickoff session and a wrap-up session at the end. We're going to set topics. We're going to have people meeting X number of times per semester, and we might set up a formal contract. Or it could be a little bit less structured or more towards unstructured. So it could be an agreement that we're going to meet regularly over some agreed time frame, but what that means and what we talk about is a little bit more unstructured and emergent, and it could be driven by the mentor, but better driven by the mentee. Or it could be just sort of ad hoc, you know, whenever a need comes up, we meet. And of course, there's the whole general role modeling that can also be a form of mentor. So as I said, like, who can be a mentor? Anybody can be a mentor. And in pulling out here, so just sort of unpacking the fact that it can be one-on-one or one to a group, or many, you know, many within a group, just to pull out the fact that, you know, I could have a mentor who's a bachelor student, because that student is an expert in being a young person in today's society, trying to deal with the fallout of COVID. And I might ask a student to be my mentor to help me understand what's going on. So there's, as I said, it doesn't necessarily mean seniority by age. It just means having experience or expertise within the particular thing that you need, that the mentee needs help or support on. And so that can also be our peers as well as sort of more senior people. And we can find mentors from within our faculties or schools or universities. Some people like, depending on the topic, some people, you know, it could be better to have someone from within the faculty. Say I'm a new lecturer and I want to know how to develop, you know, how to do the curriculum development for this faculty. That would make sense to have someone within the faculty. But maybe I am a parent with young kids, and it might make sense to have someone outside of the faculty, but maybe someone within the university where they can still tell me about what the university offers. Or maybe it makes more sense for the particular thing you need help with to look for someone from another university altogether, or even another country. Or it could be from the peer community or from industry or someone really left field. So again, there are no rules about who can be a mentor or where you find them. It's what makes sense. So as we've indicated in some of the sort of things that I've just said coming up, it can be something that the institutions set up and run, or it can be something that the mentee says, I need help with this, who can help me? And there's some suggestions there for what to think about and some of the challenges with each of those different approaches. And just to point out as well, apart from repeating the fact that all of us can be mentors, is that it's completely fine to have multiple mentoring relationships at any one time, because people can serve different needs or purposes and give different perspectives. And it's also quite okay that our mentoring relationships change over time, that what worked as a mentoring relationship last year isn't going to work now because I've moved on and have different needs. So that's all okay. And I can just reflect very quickly on some of my current mentoring relationships. So who would be my mentors right now? And, like I'm a year away from a mandatory retirement from our university. So, I would be regarded as sort of senior by some measures, but, there's a colleague in my group who's my mentor when it comes to any issues around designing interesting, engaging curriculum, because they're just so good at that. And it's not one of my strengths. I have a more structured sort of relationship with an external person who's a trainer consultant, because when I leave my academic position, I want to do more of that work, and they're expert in setting up that sort of working relationship. So they're mentoring me in some of the things that I need to think about to get that set up. And we have semi-regular meetings. I drive the agenda on that for what I need, and he contributes with what he thinks that I haven't thought about. And I also would still regard the professor who supervised my bachelor's thesis as a mentor, because she's really inspiring and a role model, and we keep in contact maybe only once or twice a year, but she's a really important person for me. So I mentor at the moment. There's a group, I'm working with a group of 3 PhD students, and our uni matched us up. They're from different disciplines. We have a structured plan of meetings and a structured set of topics. I also have a uni-facilitated mentoring relationship that's one-on-one with a postdoc who asked for me to be their mentor, and then the university mediated and got us set up. And we again have a set schedule of meetings, but our topics are driven by the postdoc. And then I also mentor many people internationally who will just contact me when they've got something that's going on and they just want to talk it through. So that's much more sort of ad hoc and driven by their needs. And I could put in many more there, but you start to get a feel that there's no one model of mentoring. So this is where we're going to sort of get into some slides with much more details that you can look at later, but just to orient you to. when you're thinking about setting up a relationship for mentoring or some sort of mentoring scheme, think about what's the overall goal or purpose of the mentoring relationship. And there are some specific questions that you might think about there. And also, and I think this is really important, what are going to be some of the core underlying values of the relationship? You know, that it is learning, that there's mutual respect, that you're prepared to be vulnerable and real with the person. If you really want to get support, it's because a mentoring relationship is not where you put on bluff and bravado and pretend that everything's wonderful and you're great. So really, if it is going to be a learning relationship, really explicitly buying into that sort of vulnerability. What topics are you going to discuss? So you may want to think about that. So if it's a structured program, the topics might be given, you know, suggested topics that are relevant at this particular career stage, whether it's a bachelor student stage, and these are the topics that are relevant, or lecturer stage, and these are the topics that are relevant. But of course, they're just guides. And I think the point of these relationships is, you know, the structured set of topics may be good pointers, and you should be free to actually work with what's most relevant or most useful for where you're at the time. And if it's a more of a self-organized or sort of more unstructured relationship, it's still useful to think about, you know, tied up with what's the purpose, you know, what are the broad areas that you're going to discuss? And in particular, what might be off-limit topics, for example? And, you know, like just setting the boundaries there. So again, there are some questions there to think about, even when it's not structured, more about the general shape of the topics. And there are some examples in the slides that you can look at later that give very specific sort of topic suggestions that may help. You also need to think about at the beginning some of the very practical arrangements. And again, like as reflected in some of our agreements, as some of the examples I gave in the previous little section, it could be something where you have a formal signed contract, and this is all documented, that you will meet how often and where and how you'll communicate in between times. So the one-on-one that I have with the postdoc, our university asked us to fill out this sort of formal signed contract. Or it could just be more of a verbal agreement. So my relationship with my industry consultant mentor, it's more of a verbal agreement where we discussed this. So again, it's about setting and managing the expectations up front. And again, there are a set of questions there to think about in how you might decide some of those practical arrangements, and many more. And again, you know, I think the thing that I draw out from this slide is just that it's okay as well. So it should be set up front about what are we going to do if we do have a problem or it's not working out, and giving each other permission right up front to be able to say it's not working and moving on without any sort of blame being attributed. I think there's also a huge amount of value in getting to know one another, especially if you haven't ever met these people before. Say it's a university assigned relationship, or even if someone requested you, they might have done it just from a web page profile. So I think it's useful for both of you at the beginning to spend some time getting to know each other. And there are different exercises that you can do together that may enable you to discuss this. So what's involved in being or becoming a mentor? What do you think? Again, just take a couple of seconds to think about. If there was, you know, there's going to be a word cloud here. What would be 3 words that you think could describe a good mentor, that you'd be looking for in a good mentor? Apart from obviously having the expertise in the topic you want help with. And unsurprisingly, this is from a particular study that was done within an academic context, and there's a reference to the paper there. You know, understandably, they're all of those skills. Yes, there's knowledgeable there, but what's so much more important is just the listening, the communication skills, the empathy skills, the patience. So it's those human to human skills. It's not sort of being expert at explaining complex concepts. So you can get a flavor of the sorts of qualities that are important. I think that it's also really important, apart from being aware of what you bring, is saying that it's okay as well as a mentor to say you don't know something and to explore it together and to not know all the answers. I know that for some mentors, some people, they feel like they can never be a mentor because they don't know enough yet. They're not expert enough, and we're never going to be expert enough. As long as we know enough, we can also work it out together. It's a relationship, and it's a mutual learning relationship. So there are some other sort of aspects there around being a mentor that pick up on those qualities. What I'd also draw attention to, and again, there's more detail here that you can read and think about later, is that when we're bringing, there are different sorts of roles, that interactional roles that we can play as mentors, depending on how the conversation is going. And maybe sometimes it's really much more advising or informing person. So if I ask Peter, how do I do X in Adobe, blah, blah, I've got a mental block now. He's not going to say to me, let's work it out together, because he knows that stuff. So he's going to tell me, like, what about trying to press this button or try this font or whatever. So sometimes it is more sort of an informative role hat that you're putting on. Sometimes it's more about being more developmental or facilitative, facilitating their thinking. So rather than, like it may be, I'm not, the mentee might come and say, I'm not quite sure what career paths I should be doing. Well, you're not going to put in on your informative hat here and say, you should be a blah, blah in your next career step. You're going to put on more of your developmental hat, and you're going to say something like, what have you been thinking about so far? What are the qualities in those options are most important to you? So you're going to be more like a thinking partner, and just providing a safe space to explore ideas together. And of course, you can put in ideas into it if you want to. And as I said, sometimes it's just about being more collaborative, or if we're looking at more of the networking, helping people network, it can be more enabling. So it's useful as a mentor to think about what particular hats might be appropriate to wear at any point in time. And one of the hats that we probably feel the pressure to put on the most, but research says is the absolute least effective, is the advice hat. So really be careful of language like you should or you ought. And really we should really be thinking about when are the few appropriate times to give advice. And there are different suggestions here where it can be a danger to jump in too quickly and give advice. And sometimes it's just worth staying curious a little bit longer to understand the problem, so that when we do give advice, we're giving advice to the right problem. So there are some examples here of particular questions in the right-hand box that you could ask. And there are also some examples here of some of the sorts of ways you could ask questions that help people doing their thinking. So again, for you to look at later on. So these are the more powerful hats, skills to bring as a mentor. You don't have to be the know-it-all. You can take the weight and the pressure of expectations of knowing it all off your shoulders and just be a learning partner with the person. And again, still just examples of unhelpful questions. So what about being a mentee or a mentee? I should put a photo of a mentee here. So being a mentee, again, it's just sort of the mirror side of it, and just pulling together what we've said before about why do you want mentoring and what do you want to get out of it, and what particular thing are you looking for? So again, questions there to think of. And also it's worth thinking about what can you offer? like it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be totally one way. You know, what can you offer people as well? Recognizing that it's okay to be honest. I mean, again, this is all just reflecting the other side about, you know, being committed to being authentic and being clear what you want. And when you do meet together, both of you being fully present and focused, you know, that empathy and listening and rapport goes both ways. So in thinking about, you know, why do you want, you know, as a mentee, why do you want mentoring? Here are some, you know, here is again an example checklist from a particular organization, you know, within an academic context that may be helpful for you to think through to see if any of those hit home. And again, as a checklist from another source, again, just sort of suggestions of the sorts of things that you could be thinking about in terms of what you might want mentoring for. I also have here in the slides some suggestions for, you know, like, okay, you've decided you want mentoring, you've worked out what model you're going to have that's going to fit, you've got your mentoring agreement, whether it's verbal or written, in place, and now you've got to meet together. What do you do? So there's a suggestion there for what you might cover in a first session, which can really be about getting to know one another. And so there could be some, you know, there are some suggestions here. Again, and some other suggestions from other sources is from, you know, Johannes Kepler University, University of Linz, you know, preparing for the initial meeting and content for the initial meeting. Again, these suggestions may help you. And I just think it's interesting that everyone has their own different lists, which also gives us permission to come up with our own list for what works for us for this context. But again, just as input to that, here are some suggestions. And then for each session that you do have, so you will agree how often you're meeting and, you know, what you're talking about, and the mentee usually drives the content of those talks. There are some suggestions for how you wrap up the meeting. Because it's a learning relationship, there are some really nice ways to wrap it up and draw together the learning so that people go on to have action. So, you know, where are you now at with this topic? What's your key takeaway? What are you going to, what specific thing might you do as a you know, next step from this? So, you know, suggestions for wrapping up. And also a set of suggestions here for how any session might flow. So, you know, starting off with what do you want to focus on today and what would be a good outcome and so on. So again, you know, something for you to look through later. So I'm going to pretty much finish here. I've tried to just, I hope, open up the space to make it, to make it clear that we all need mentors and we all can be mentors, to say that there are many different types of mentoring relationships and it's what makes sense for now and for us and where I want to go, that we often probably have multiple relationships going at the same time, that really setting up and managing the relationship, you know, requires some thinking so that there's a clear set of boundaries and goals and structures, at least agreements in how you're going to work, and some practical suggestions for how that might play out. So I thank you, and we are going to spend time hopefully discussing what you want to do in your context or what you could offer people and what you might need. I have included here some links to the papers and resources, and I'd also just point people to the podcast series that I haven't done much with lately, and because of pandemic and other things, but we can also learn a lot just by listening to other people's stories, for that sense of not being alone, which I think is a big message. So thank you.
So thank you very much, Geraldine. That was an excellent talk. I hope we have some students here, and I hope that was kind of inspiring for them. We also have some seniors. I'm pretty sure that, including myself, we all need some kind of mentorship, mentoring, or coaching, or whatever. I'm gonna let's proceed to the question session and see whether we have any questions. So. For those of you who are in Zoom, please write your questions in chat. And do you have any questions, the people who are live here? This is the chance to ask about mentoring. Any questions? I will start with one question. So here in Greece, I think that a lot of students and especially women probably often feel that they need to talk to somebody, but they don't know how to find this somebody, or how to reach the right person, or what exactly to do. And probably this is true also not only for the students, but for the seniors as well. So do you have some advice for all of us?
Yes, I think that one of the first things is recognizing that if you're thinking that and feeling like you just need someone to bounce ideas around or some support or advice, others are probably feeling like that too. So I think the first thing is not just assuming that you must be a bit strange and everyone else has got it organized. So talk about it with each other. Say, how are you going with this, and what do you think we could do? Don't underestimate the wisdom of the group. So I think peer-to-peer mentoring can be really powerful. So, if there are a whole lot of, second-year students together who are feeling like we could all do with a bit of support, agree to meet for lunch every Friday and just talk. And it could just be, these assignments are so hard, and just sharing that together, or it may be just helping each other out, because even as peers, there's lots that we can support each other with, or we all have different strengths and things to contribute. And if it is going to be helpful to have someone else or more senior who isn't part of the peer group, who can you go to? And whether that's a lecturer to ask for their suggestions, or if you're a lecturer and you're needing support, whether it's going to the dean. I know that when many people start at a new university, the dean will allocate a lecturer, a mentor for the person to help them get their feet under the table, so to speak, at that university. But it could also be just mailing out to a mailing list and saying anyone prepared to give some time. I think owning it and recognizing you're not alone is a really key thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have other questions? We have one question from the audience. Just 1 minute, because she has to use the mic. Otherwise, you cannot hear her.
Can't hear?
Hello? Okay.
That's better, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for this very inspiring presentation. I'm asking from the, let's say, mentor position, although I'm not a mentor. What about the hypothetical situation here where you have set up a mentor-mentee relationship, but then the mentee, let's say, is not so motivated and disappears and does not reach out to you? So what is the level of freedom to try to find him and push him to talk to you?
Yeah, I think that that's part of that initial conversation when we set up a mentoring relationship. What happens if someone goes AWOL, goes missing? How do you agree to handle it? So having that explicit permission beforehand can help. And also, as a mentor, I don't follow up. I follow up on people if I think they're really struggling, and that's why, I'll just sort of check in. I'll just ping them on email and say, haven't heard from you a while, especially if it's a more unstructured, relationship. How are you going? But I think it's really important that we take the burden of responsibility off our shoulders and leave it sitting with the mentee. So we can contact them and say, ping them and say, how are you going? But it's not our responsibility to make them reply or to make them step back into the relationship. That a big part of the mentoring relationship is that the mentee commits to being engaged and involved. And even when we have structured topics, that the mentee commits to driving the agenda. That this is the topic today that would work for me, or whatever. So I would say, do what's reasonable, but don't feel like it's up to you to make it work. In that initial setup discussion, make it clear that this is all, the mentee drives it. And if they don't respond or get back, that's their loss. They're missing out on your brilliant mentoring. So
thank you very much.
Any other question? I think there are no other questions.
Yeah.
So we could proceed to the next session.
Do you want me to do the mentee, or will we just give people a couple of minutes to think about these issues?
I think the three questions are pretty easy to be answered, so we could try it.
Do it quickly. Yep. Let me share screen.
Sorry, there is one more question.
Yes. So while
Lena?
that question's being asked.
Yeah, Lena, please feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi all. So Geraldine, thank you. The talk is very inspiring.
I'm having trouble hearing that a bit. Can you speak a little bit closer to the microphone?
Yes, I'll try to. Sorry, I'm a bit sick, so maybe it's my voice actually. I actually attended one of your talks, in 2019, where you spoke about a book called Give and Take.
Yes.
How helping others drives our success. So
yes.
I have a question related to that. I think it's no problem if people don't know the book. So the idea is that by helping others, you create, that resources in this world, let's say, that success in this world is not limited. So you don't really have to compete for it, let's say.
Absolutely.
But that by helping others, you actually create more success, more good, so you can also have a part of it.
Yep.
So I've been wondering, in your experience, how difficult is it to convince mentees of something like that? I wonder if mentees come to you with the spirit of competitiveness, actually.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah. I think, again, it's wonderful to remind us about that book. And that's what I was sort of referring to in that academic circle of kindness, that in giving and taking, we generate a whole lot of positive energy within our peer networks and within our communities, up and down our communities, to recognize that everyone has something to give and something to offer. And the mentee poll that we're going to do now is exactly trying to give that message. And I think that setting it up, the mentor has a big responsibility in that beginning, and maybe the institutions as well, if it's an institution or organization run program, in setting the intention of it being a learning relationship, and it can be a mutual learning, that even though the initial setting up is because someone needs help in this particular area and someone has more experience or expertise to offer in this particular area, it's in the context of relationship, there can be lots of giving and taking. And I think making the mentor, making it clear that it's not a competition, and that it is about, let's all help each other get better, because in giving and taking to each other, we make everyone stronger and better. And we will do better research, better work, better studies, be better, computer scientists, whatever, as a result, helping each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we don't have any other questions. And I would like to ask you to use your cellular phone or your laptop and go to www.menti.com and then provide the code that is, you can see in these slides. Have you done it or not? Geraldine, can you please give the code again?
Oh, what happened there? Oh, can you see it
Oh,
there now?
okay, now we can see it. Yes, thank you.
So I was trying to find the URL for the chat window so that people online could just directly log on.
So I would like you all to get into www.menti.com. Those who are, yes, on Zoom, thank you, Geraldine. You just provided the link in the chat. Please go to this website and provide the code that Geraldine.
And this is an anonymous website. You don't need to log on or have an account. It's just really directly going to it. And they just, in the interest of time, while people are still joining, you can start to answer this. Like, what are your thoughts on how important do you think mentoring is for your development? And could you benefit from having a mentor? And could you imagine yourself being a mentor? So what we see here on this curve, that number is the average, and we see here by the shape of the curve, the number of people. So it's great. So people do see mentoring as being important, and that people could definitely benefit from having a mentor. And I'd love to encourage you to think about what sort of things could you be a mentor in? Like, what are you good at? What do you like doing? And it doesn't matter what stage you're at. Like, it'd be great to have this curve of this last one more skewed to the other end. So I'd really encourage you to think about that. And then in thinking about the giving and taking, so this would be the sort of take, what would you like advice or help with? Like, what need would you have right now? What expertise could help you right now? What particular topics or issues? So like work-life balance is an issue that we can all deal with at all stages that we struggle with, whether you're a student or just about to retire, as I am. It's an issue. How to succeed and fail, what the market, what's the nature of success, what are the options for careers, how do I do research projects, how do I get European funding, how do I manage time, just getting inspired, how do I be a better teacher, how do I deal with ageism? That can go for young and old, can't it? So how do I be more decisive? So you can see here, reflecting some of the topics that we talked about, some of these are very functional, task-oriented. This is how you apply for funding. These are the schemes. This is what needs to be in a proposal. So someone could actually help you with very practical, task-oriented things. And some of the other things we can see are much more about just needing reassurance, or others we can see them needing more guidance. So again, think about those and just have a look at these needs, because the next question is going to ask, what can you give? So you may see something here and go, actually, I could just be, you know, like a person to support someone on this topic. So I'll share these set of slides for you, but look at all of those needs here. Isn't that, you know, and I'm going to the next slide, next page. What could you offer advice or support about, having seen those or thinking about other things that you have some expertise in? You may not be the world's leading expert, but you've got enough that you could help someone. and together you could learn more. So this is the give. What could you give to people in the give and take? So helping people, because you understand student life, or you're really good at how to give presentations, you could help someone negotiate industry versus academia because you probably had experience in both of those areas, so you could share perspectives. You could help people get some balance by, I don't know, engaging in music or doing different things. And there's just providing support. So just being human, we can be a mentor for each other, especially in a peer mentoring group. The positive thoughts, psychological support, being positive, whatever, we can all offer that to one another. So that's great. I'm going to finish here so that we can move on then. And moving into the discussion groups, we're going to try to get much more practical, and Eula will set this up because we want to try and translate these things into what could you practically do right now in your context, or even within the group that you're meeting in.
Okay, so
I'm
thank
going
you.
to finish this here.
Thank you very much, Geraldine, but thanks also to all of you who provided wonderful feedback. Okay, Stelio, could you please create the Zoom groups? Maybe something like we have 12, maybe 3 groups of 4 persons each. And let's try to create groups here as well. So may I ask to have groups of 4 and maybe just are you students? You're students, right? Yeah, maybe the 2 of you and 1 more, maybe 1 girl, so that we have can match with Talia here. And then 4 students from there with Irini. And another group with Ioana over there.
I will email the results of the poll to the people who are going to facilitate the group. So just if you want to check your email, I'm in the process of doing it.
So Geraldine, we are ready here. And we can start, I guess.
Yes. So are you going to set up the questions, or do you want, or is it, we could just talk about the fact that the facilitators know?
Yeah, I can actually display the questions, but every group has a facilitator, so people know as well. Okay. So in this slide, you can see some examples of the topics that you could discuss. But the discussion, you feel free to discuss whatever is of more interest to you. They are not restrictive, okay? By no means. Let's try to finish in about 1-2 minutes, okay? So Stelios, shall we close the breakout rooms in 1 minute from now? Also, can you please, so your Gia is back. Do you want to be assigned again or?
So all of them left, so I had to go
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm gonna stay here. I don't mind being assigned to another group too. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think it's a little bit of a pity because I see that people have very nice discussions here, but let's hope that we will be given the chance to meet again and to continue in the near future. So let's start the wrap-up session. Is it okay?
So we just thought we would ask, the rooms are just closing now, so there'll be people.
Yeah, all
more
of them are
online
back,
people
right?
Coming back.
Yeah, people here refuse to stop talking.
Great, and may it continue over the next sessions. The next session.
So may I ask who has to report something? Would you like to report something? Irini, shall we start? Can somebody give her the mic, please? Where is the mic? Give you the mic.
Hello? Okay. I had discussion with 3 very bright not students, postgraduate students actually, who are also currently working at the Athena Research Institute. Since they are working mainly, they told me that their challenges and the need for a mentor would be on finding the proper way to work, which includes not only technical skills, but also some soft skills. For example, they mentioned that they are, even from this early point, participating in some European projects in telcos, etc. And they need to find the soft skills to handle, for example, in, let's say, more diplomatic way, some issues. And they don't have such experience, of course. Also, they are quite worried about how their current or past decisions are going to influence their future career and whether the steps that they have already taken are going to lead them to, let's say, a proper goal. Another thing that they have mentioned is that they would be interested in general to hear the stories, the personal stories of other people. For example, they really enjoyed today that they heard the story of our industry panel, the personal stories and how they got to this point, because they learned that it's okay to fail, it's okay to change topics. You eventually, in the end, find your career path. So, okay, more or less, this is what we discussed.
Thank you very much. I think that was wonderful feedback. What do you think, Geraldine? You may
Yeah.
pass the mic to Thalia.
Yeah, that's great. That's got the makings of a great mentoring group to work with some people a little bit more experienced in project work and also who can help discuss some of the career opening choices that people make.
Thalia?
Hi, everyone. So I had the opportunity to talk with two brilliant undergraduate students and one postgraduate students. We talk mostly about things like how to make sure that when you make a decision, it's not the end of the world. For example, when it's time for you to choose a direction or a major in your undergraduate studies, or whether to do a PhD or not, that you just go with your instinct and it's always, you can always change direction in the future. It's not the end of the world. We talked about things like how is it to live abroad and do part of your studies or get some career experience abroad. And when you pursue a PhD, how to deal with also maybe potentially having a family. So these are some of the struggles and things that these students had in mind, and we talked about that.
Great, thank you very much. So, Katerina, would you like to report something? Let's try to be fast.
Hello. So in my team, I think we were all very self-aware of our disadvantages and advantages. So when we were considering ourselves what we wish we received as mentees, we all had basically two main categories. So someone would like more a psychological approach. So someone that will motivate them, someone that will distress them. But we also had some practical school of thought. So we had some others that we just want a solution. We want some guidance. We want to be straightforward. So we had these two main pillars. And when we thought ourselves as a mentor, I think we saw our disadvantage, or no, sorry, our advantages. And we would say that me, for example, I'm a very creative person. So while this might be a disadvantage as a mentee, I think it would be a good advantage as a mentor to someone who is very practical. And again, someone who is very, very good in their field and an expert, they could give their expert advice to someone who can't grasp what to do and what to solve. So these were the basic pillars.
It's great. Okay, so Pavlos, can you just have a minute at most?
Okay. So we are time over. So we were 5 members, 2 students, 1 postgraduate student, and 3 senior members. We had a free discussion, so there was no strict agenda. So the main points are the students need mentoring. Very often it depends on the phase of their studies. So when somebody is finishing his study, is writing his thesis, so he will need more support on how to write the thesis or how to defend the thesis in front of an audience. A general request is that, or a general topic is if mentorship should be very specific to define strict tasks for the mentee, or if the guides, the instructions should be more general and leave more freedom to the mentee. Me as a supervisor, I have faced both situations. with my students. Some students like more very specific tasks. Other students feel better and perform better when they have more freedom. Another point that we discussed is that often the mentees may have difficulties to evaluating their progress. So one might have the feeling that he's doing very great, but maybe in fact he's not doing so good. Or maybe, for example, a postgraduate student may just had a paper rejected, may feel like he's doing nothing and everything is wrong, where the truth might be that he's doing very well. So this is not an easy point for anyone, also for senior members to know every time to know if they're actually doing well or not. For the team organization, we discussed and we more or less agreed that peer-to-peer organization of the team is might be a good idea. So everybody participates more or less equally. The roles should be there, but they should not be so strictly defined that everybody must do specific tasks. It should be more equally. And the general also point is career support for the people who are entering the market or who have to make the decisions about their careers. So more or less this.
Thank you, Pavlos. I'm afraid we are running out of time. I know that the people from Zoom have not did not have the chance to give us some feedback, but I would like to ask all of you to email me the things that you have reported, and we are gonna study all the information and come back to you and probably arrange a bigger event in the future where we will all have more time to discuss more and also get this feedback online. And so we have a Google form that you can find in this link, and please go there, and it's a very simple to fill in form, and please complete it. And at this point, I would like to thank very much all of you for the feedback, and Geraldine in particular for being here with us. I am really sorry that I could not accommodate the reports by all groups. Thank you very much for participating. We have to start the next session now because some people have the flights and the time is very precious. Thank you very much. Geraldine, do you have one last thing?
All the best in setting up some very practical results coming out of this, because it seems like there's a lot of goodwill and interest in giving and taking in mentoring.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.